The Prodigal Son is the story about the greatest second chance that any one of us could ever receive. So today we're going to look at this parable of the prodigal son through the eyes of the Father. Let's go. Welcome to the series Through the Eyes of. In this series, we look at Bible stories from the perspective of a different character each time. This gives us a new way of looking at a familiar story and may teach us some things that we've never noticed before. Today we're looking at the prodigal son, but this time we'll look at it through the eyes of the Father. If you want to read along, the story can be found in Luke chapter 15, verses 11 to 32. As we dive into this parable, let's remember that the main character of this story is actually Jesus. He's the one who told it, and the entire parable is talking about him and his relationship with sinners. You see, Jesus came to seek and save those who are lost. His ministry was focused on sinners, not religious people. He ate with them, talked with them, touched them, even called some of them to be his disciples. So keep that in mind as you hear this story. Now let's get into the story. Verse 11, a man had 2 sons. This is how Jesus began this story. Now, you have to understand something about Jewish culture back then. It was very important to have a son, especially an older son who would take care of his parents when they got old. Sons were important because daughters would eventually leave the family unit when they married. So having sons meant that there would be people to carry on your bloodline and take care of you in your old age. So this man had 2 sons. The older son was responsible and would someday take over the family business, but the younger son wanted to live life his own way. He didn't want to wait until he was older to experience all that life had to offer. And so he demanded his inheritance early. The father didn't really want to do this, but it was a common practice in the culture to give a son what he asked for, if he insisted. So the father divided his estate between them. The younger son received half of everything and went out into the world to do whatever he wanted. Verse 13, not long after that, he packed it all in, and off he went to a distant land where he squandered his money in wild living. This son made a huge mistake. He left everything that was familiar to him, and he set out on a journey where he wasted all of his money. Now, eventually he ran out of money and found himself in terrible circumstances, and so he started looking for work. And verse 16 tells us that he soon found himself working for a farmer, and he was so desperate that he even hired on as a pig handler. Pigs were unclean animals, and in the culture back then, someone who worked with pigs was considered unclean. So he didn't just find himself in terrible circumstances, he found himself in the worst possible circumstances. And while he was there, he became extremely hungry, but all the owner had was bread that he was feeding the pigs, and he wasn't allowed to eat that kind of bread. But as he looked at the pigs eating the bread, he said to himself, if only I had some of that bread, I would be full. I am starving here with hunger pangs, yet I am expected to take care of these pigs. And so he decided that he was going to run away. Verse 18 says, then he got up and went straight to the father he had left. But while he was still a long way off, his father saw him and ran to meet him, threw his arms around him, and kissed him. This is the turning point in the story. The son knew that he messed up. He knew that he had done something terrible. And I believe that he thought that his father would be angry with him, and he expected to be punished, but instead his father ran to him and embraced him. I think that this is such a beautiful picture of God running to us when we mess up. When we come to him and say that we're sorry, God isn't waiting to see how bad we've messed up or how low we've gotten. God doesn't wait for us to hit rock bottom. No, God runs to us when we're far off, even when we're far off. God runs to us when we're in our sin, even when we're in our sin. God runs to us when we're hiding, even when we're hiding. God runs to us when we fall, even when we fall. God is ready to embrace us and forgive us. But let's continue on. Verse 20, his father was so glad to see him that he threw a party, killed a fattened calf, and invited everyone to come and celebrate. This is another thing that I love about this story. You see, the son expected to be punished, but instead, he was celebrated. He expected anger, but instead he was embraced. He expected rejection, but instead he was welcomed home. He expected condemnation, but instead he was forgiven. And the celebration didn't just include the son, the father, and maybe a few other people. No, it was a huge celebration that included everyone. The father was so happy that his son came home that he didn't want to wait to tell anyone else. He wanted everyone to come and celebrate with them. But there was one more person who had a problem with the celebration. Verse 29, meanwhile, the older son had come back from the fields, and as he approached the house, he heard music and dancing. So he too wanted to go in and celebrate. But when he reached the door, he stopped and was upset. He could hear the music and the celebration, but he wouldn't go in. This older son was probably a great guy. He stayed on the farm. He took care of his responsibilities. He honored his father and mother. He probably even prayed every day that his brother would turn his life around. But he felt left out of the celebration. He wondered why his father didn't celebrate his faithfulness and his obedience. But listen to what his father said to him in verse 30. His father came out, saw him standing there, and asked, "My son, why are you so upset?" The older son replied, "Look, all these years I've worked hard for you, and never once did I disobey your orders. And yet you never gave me even a young goat for me to celebrate with my friends. But when this son of yours came home after squandering your estate with prostitutes, you killed a fattened calf and celebrated." And he's just like that. He's a son of the devil. This is what happens sometimes when we celebrate second chances. People miss out on the blessing of being included in the celebration. They can't rejoice with those who have been forgiven. They can't be happy for those who have received mercy. Instead, they resent those people. In verse 32, "But the father said to him, 'My son, you are always with me, and everything I have is yours. But we had to celebrate and be happy, because your brother was dead and has now been brought back to life. He was lost and has now been found.' And he went out to celebrate with those who shared his joy." And that's what God does. He celebrates with those who share his joy, because when one of his children comes back to him, he rejoices. He throws a party. He's happy. He's excited because his child who was dead is alive again. His child who was lost is found. His child who was far off is now near. Oh, friend, I hope that you can hear the joy in the voice of the Father. As I read this, I hope that you can feel the excitement and the happiness that he has. For the Father didn't just want his son to come home. He wanted everyone to know that his son came home. You see, this story isn't just about a boy who went out and had fun and then returned home. No, this story is about the greatest second chance that any one of us could ever receive. It's about the opportunity that we have to go to God and admit that we've done wrong, and he will run to us and embrace us and throw a party and celebrate. And here's the best part. We don't need to be worthy of his forgiveness. We don't need to earn his mercy. All we need to do is come to him and admit our sin. That's it. Oh, friend, I pray that you can experience the amazing forgiveness of our God today. And I pray that you won't just receive the forgiveness, but that you will also join in on the celebration, rejoicing in the second chance that you have in Jesus. Thanks for watching. I hope this video helped you see this story in the Bible in a new way. If you liked this video, please give us a thumbs up. And don't forget to subscribe so you don't miss any of our videos.